Did you know that butter has been around for over 4,000 years? The funny thing is, it was made by accident by people who carried milk in animal skin bags. Fast forward to the modern day, and butter is now being made in large factories. Stick around to know exactly what goes on inside these milky labs. It all starts with milk. To make butter, everything begins with milk. But not just any kind of milk. Cow's milk is the star of the show because it contains the perfect balance of fat and nutrients needed to get that creamy golden block we all know and love. The process starts on dairy farms, where cows are milked using special machines that are gentle and efficient. These machines collect milk directly into large sanitized tanks to keep it fresh and free from contamination. Farmers take great care of the cows, making sure they are healthy and well fed, because high-quality milk depends on happy, healthy cows. Once the milk is collected, it's stored in big refrigerated tanks and transported to the butter factory in shiny, insulated trucks. These trucks are like giant refrigerators on wheels, keeping the milk at the perfect cold temperature to prevent it from spoiling. If the milk gets warm, it can go bad before it even reaches the factory, which would ruin everything. When the milk arrives at the factory, workers test it right away. They check for cleanliness, freshness, and just the right amount of fat content. This ensures that only the best milk makes it through. After all, good butter starts with good milk. Cream separation, the heart of butter. Once the milk passes all the tests, it moves on to the first big step in the butter making process, and that's separating the cream from the milk. This is where the magic begins. The milk is poured into a giant machine called a separator, which works a bit like a super speedy washing machine. It spins the milk so fast that it splits into two parts, cream and skim milk. The cream is the thick, rich part of the milk that contains most of the fat, and that's exactly what we need to make butter. The skim milk, which has very little fat, is not wasted. It's sent off to be used in other products, like low-fat milk, yogurt, or even cheese. Factories are super efficient and make sure nothing goes to waste. But here's an interesting fact. Not all cream is the same. Some batches of cream are thicker and fattier than others, depending on the milk and even the cows it came from. To make sure the butter turns out perfectly every time, factories standardize the cream, which means they adjust the fat content to a specific level, so it's just right for churning. Without this step, the butter could turn out too soft, too hard, or not as tasty. Pasteurization, killing the bad stuff. After the cream is separated, it needs to be pasteurized. This step is super important because it makes the cream safe to eat and helps the butter last longer without spoiling. Pasteurization might sound complicated, but it's really just a fancy word for heating the cream to a high temperature for a short time to kill any bacteria or germs. The cream is pumped through special machines that heat it up quickly and evenly. But don't worry, the cream isn't cooked or boiled. It's just warmed up enough to kill the bad stuff while keeping all the good flavors intact. This step also helps improve the butter's texture and quality, making it smoother and creamier. Once the cream is heated, it's cooled down just as quickly to stop it from getting too hot. It's then stored in clean tanks, where it waits to move on to the next exciting step. By now, the cream is not only safe and fresh, but also ready to transform into butter. This process may sound simple, but it's a key part in making sure the butter you enjoy is both delicious and safe to eat. Churning, where cream turns into butter. Churning is the step where cream finally transforms into butter. It's like watching science and art come together. The cream is poured into a massive machine called a churner, which is designed to whip, beat, and shake it until it changes completely. Inside the churner, there are paddles or blades that spin at high speeds. As the cream is whipped around, the fat molecules start sticking together to form solid clumps. These clumps are what we call butter. It's an amazing transformation, and if you've ever made butter at home by shaking cream in a jar, you'll know how satisfying it is to see cream turn solid. But that's not all. As the butter forms, a liquid called buttermilk is left behind. Buttermilk is what remains after most of the fat is removed from the cream. In the past, people used to drink it straight or use it in cooking. Today, it's often used for recipes for pancakes, biscuits, and even fried chicken batter. Now, the butter that comes out of the churner isn't quite ready yet. It still needs some finishing touches, like washing and seasoning, to become the buttery perfection we all know. Washing and salting, perfecting the butter. Now that the butter is formed, it goes through a final makeover to make it perfect. First, it needs to be washed. You might wonder, why wash butter? Well, after churning, there's some leftover buttermilk clinging to the butter, and if it's not removed, the butter could spoil faster. To fix this, the butter is rinsed with cold, clean water multiple times until it's completely free of buttermilk. This step also improves the texture, making the butter smooth and silky. After washing, it's time to add salt. Salt isn't just about flavor, although it does make the butter taste amazing. It also acts as a natural preservative, helping the butter stay fresh for longer. The salt is sprinkled into the butter, and then it's kneaded or mixed until it's evenly spread throughout. This ensures that every slice or spread of butter tastes just right. Some factories also make unsalted butter, which skips this step entirely. Unsalted butter is often used for baking because it gives bakers more control over the saltiness of their recipes. But regardless of whether the butter is salted or unsalted, this final stage is what gives it its finished, ready-to-eat look and taste. Now it's ready to be shaped and packaged, making it ready for you. Now that the butter is clean, salted, and perfectly mixed, it's time to get it into the form you recognize. Factories use large machines to shape the butter into neat rectangular blocks or spreadable forms. The butter moves along the conveyor belts, where machines slice it into the precise sizes you see in the store, like a 1-pound block or those smaller half-pound sizes. These machines are designed to work quickly and efficiently, producing thousands of uniform pieces in just an hour. Once the butter is shaped, the next step is wrapping. The wrapping process is just as important because it helps keep the butter fresh and prevents it from absorbing unwanted smells from the environment. Factories use foil or paper for traditional blocks of butter, while spreadable butter is often packaged in plastic tubs. The wrappers are sealed tightly to lock in freshness, and some companies even stamp their logo or name onto the packaging to make it easy to recognize on store shelves. Finally, the butter is packed into cartons or boxes for transportations. Workers or automated machines stack the butter carefully to avoid any damage. Once packed, it's ready to be shipped out to stores or restaurants, making its way to your fridge. Quality control, the final check. Before butter can leave the factory and make its way to your local grocery store, it has to pass one final and very important step: quality control. This process ensures that every single batch of butter meets strict standards for taste, texture, and appearance. Quality control teams inspect the butter closely. First, they check how it looks. The butter should be smooth with no odd clumps, discoloration, or air bubbles. Then they test its texture. Butter that's too soft or too hard doesn't make the cut. After that comes the taste and smell test. Workers take samples of each batch to ensure the butter has that creamy, slightly nutty flavor people love. If anything tastes off, that batch won't move forward. The packaging is inspected too. Wrappers are checked to make sure they're properly sealed with no tears or leaks. Even the labels on the packaging are examined to ensure they're printed correctly and placed neatly. Any small mistake can mean the butter doesn't leave the factory. Once the butter passes all these checks, it's loaded onto the trucks under refrigerated conditions to keep it fresh. From there, it's sent out to stores, bakeries, and restaurants, where it eventually finds its way to your table. What about special butters? You've probably noticed that some butter brands in the grocery store are labeled European style or grass-fed, and you may have wondered what makes them so special. Let's break it down. European style butter is known for having a higher fat content, sometimes up to 85% compared to regular butter's 80%. This extra fat makes it richer, creamier, and perfect for baking flaky pastries like croissants. To make this type of butter, factories churn the cream for longer to remove more water. The result is a denser and silkier butter. Some European-style butters are also cultured, which means the cream is fermented slightly before churning to give it a tangy flavor. Grass-fed butter comes from cows that eat mostly grass instead of grains. This diet affects the flavor and color of the butter, giving it a golden yellow hue and a slightly earthy taste. Grass-fed butter is also said to contain more healthy fats like omega-3s. Although the steps to make these special butters are similar to regular butter, factories adjust the churning, cream selection, and even the feeding of cows to create these unique products. It's all about catering to different tastes and preferences. Fun facts about butter you didn't know. Butter isn't just for cooking and eating. It has so many surprising uses that you probably never even imagined. For starters, did you know that butter is sometimes used in the production of certain medicines? The fats in butter can act as a base for creams or ointments in the pharmaceutical world. It's also a key ingredient in some cosmetics, especially lip balms and moisturizers, because it's so hydrating. And here's something even cooler. Butter sculptures are a real thing. In some fairs and festivals, artists use huge blocks of butter to create amazing statues and designs. These sculptures can take days to make and can weigh hundreds of pounds. Some of them are even displayed in refrigerated rooms so they don't melt. Butter is also a kitchen superhero. It can add shine to vegetables, prevent pancakes from sticking to the pan, and even soften dry bread crusts. Plus, it's great for greasing baking pans and enhancing the flavor of popcorn. All in all, butter is so much more than just a spread. It has cultural, artistic, and practical uses that make it one of the most versatile foods in your kitchen. Now that you know exactly how butter is made in a factory, the next time you spread some on your bread or bake cookies, take a moment to appreciate the hard work that goes into making it. Butter might seem simple, but behind every block is a fascinating process that brings a touch of magic to your kitchen. Now head to the comments and let us know what type of butter is your favorite. And if you want to know exactly how your favorite things are made from scratch, then subscribe to our channel right away.